Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Midnight Horror Picture Show. I'm so glad you're here. Last autumn, I got the opportunity to meet today's guest at the Queer Fear Film Festival in North Carolina and was just blown away by her debut feature, The Rebrand, a crowd-pleasing, expertly crafted horror comedy that won Best Feature at the festival. Writer-director Kaye Adelaide is a Montreal-based filmmaker. She is an alumni of Jeunes Genre Film Lab, as well as a recipient of the Diversity of Voices Initiative at the BANFF World Media Festival and the SODEC Jeunes Createurs Development Program. Kaye has directed several award-winning short films, including Don't Text Back and MonsterDyke, both of which we will discuss today. The Rebrand has now taken home numerous Best Feature awards during its festival run, including the 2025 Salem Horror Fest. As a trans lesbian, Kaye's work broadens representation for gender minorities and challenges societal biases through a playful combination of genres, including horror, speculative fiction, comedy, and camp. Kaye is definitely an artist to follow, and the insights into her process being a multi-disciplinary talent on set and why horror and comedy work so well together made this interview a lot of fun to record. I'm very excited to share with you my conversation with Kaye Adelaide. Well, hi, Kaye. Thank you so much for being here today.
Hi, Neil. Thanks so much for having me.
So I saw your film, The Rebrand, at the 2024 Queer Fear Film Festival in North Carolina, and I absolutely loved it. It was so much fun. Can you explain just like a brief synopsis of what The Rebrand is about?
Yeah, definitely. So it's about a pair of really toxic lesbian influencers who have been canceled, and they're trying to make a redemption documentary. So they hire this 8 months pregnant videographer to document their rebrand as mommy influencers, but things start to seem a little bit, things kind of take an ominous turn, and it seems like they might have ulterior motives going on.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we're gonna talk more about The Rebrand, but let's start off with, how did you get started making films? Like, what drew you to creating film and storytelling?
I think, honestly, a big thing that drew me to an interest in film was like a fear of film. I think as a child, I was like so traumatized by being exposed to like more adult media too early, of like with scary scenes and stuff. And I was so freaked out thinking that I had witnessed true, like, real life horror, that I like needed to find out more about the filmmaking process in order to like reassure myself. And I think that was kind of the start of my lifelong love of horror, but also just filmmaking in general. I was like, if the grown-ups are telling me that this is fake, explain how, because I don't believe you, because it seems pretty real to me. Like, I think that's where it all began.
Yeah, I love that, because and I think that's a pretty common, a pretty common path to creating horror, is initially being terrified or traumatized by it when you're way too young. I come from the same kind of place, but figuring out, okay, well, if this is fake, how does it look so real? And being able to recreate that, I think, is cathartic in a lot of ways. I think for me personally, as a storyteller, there's also a catharsis in, writing these stories about what I'm afraid of, or like my fears, and whether that's straight on or using metaphors to explain them, but working through them, myself through making a project.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's such a huge element to it. Is to self-soothe through imagination, kind of.
Absolutely. In that vein of self-soothing through like the creative process, can you talk a little bit about how you put your personal experiences or translate those into the films you've made?
Definitely. I think a lot of my films come from either stories that happened to me or stories that friends have told me about that happened to them, like, but then sort of elevated and twisted into a more supernatural or exaggerated to the point of a bloody chaos kind of realm. For example, the Rebrand is kind of in some ways inspired by an experience I had in the first year of film school where I was driven out to this shoot. I was supposed to be DOP and film this project for a friend and sort of a new friend. I didn't really know him very well. It was just like a film school colleague. And we drove like an hour and a half out into the country, and then it's the end of the shoot day, and I was like, okay, well, I guess how are we organizing rides? Who's driving me back? And he was like, oh no, I didn't tell you. Like, it only makes sense that you'd stay here with us tonight. Like, that's the only logical thing. And I was like, wait, but I didn't pack anything. Like, I'm not expecting to stay. He's like, well, we're not driving. We're starting early tomorrow. It makes more sense to stay here. And then that just kept happening for like 3 or 4 days. Like, we kept going like on this tour of different sort of places that I was just getting dragged along and never allowed to go back home for like a full like 72 hours or more. And so, yeah, it got very like, and I was getting maybe 2 hours of sleep a night because we were just working so long. And so it became this really nightmarish hallucinogenic experience kind of. So I think that kind of inspires like the type of thing that happens in our movie where you're just getting your boundaries pushed a little bit more and a little bit more while you're working in the film industry or as a videographer.
100%. 100%. I think any person who has done video for hire has some version of that story. Maybe not as intense as like you need to stay the night, but boundaries being pushed of A, what you're comfortable with, B, time just in general of like, oh, no, we're only doing this one thing. It's going to take like 2 hours. And then suddenly it's a 10-hour shoot you're on. But yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, no, I feel like that's a very universal experience. With that, so when I spoke with you after the festival, you had compared the Rebrand to another film that I was already thinking. It was already in my head, and that was Creep.
Yes, definitely.
Right. And you called it, what was it? It was like a mix.
Lesbians.
Creep with lesbians. That was the praise, which is perfect. I mean, an oversimplification because this takes a very different turn than Creep, I would say,
Yeah.
but it's so much fun all the way through. Can you talk a little bit about its reception so far?
I have been so touched and excited by the reception of this film. Honestly, like our goal that we were saying the whole time as we were making this, because we knew we're doing it without any funding, we're doing it just with friends, we're doing it on weekends, this type of thing. Like our goal is for like just to play at one festival and for just like one group of people who weren't involved in making it to see it. That was like what we wanted to make happen. But in the end, we've gone to over a dozen film festivals already in the first 6 months since it's been released. And we've actually won Best Feature 4 festivals, which we were not expecting to happen at all. And that was mind blowing. And so I'm really excited about the reception and just overall everyone's finding it that's so entertaining and making them laugh. And I think that that's really important always to laugh more. So I'm just really happy that it's making this many people entertained and laughing. Like,
Absolutely. It is a true horror comedy. I think it is balanced very well, and it's really hard as a filmmaker and as a storyteller to find that balance of keeping tension to build that horror along with the levity of the almost mile a minute from your actors jokes that are happening throughout. Can you tell us a little bit about the process of working with your actors? We have Nancy Webb, who played Thistle, Andi McQueen, who played Blair, and Naomi Silver-Vézina, who plays Nicole, the videographer. So what was set like working with these actors?
honestly, it was some of the most fun I've ever had in my life, hands down. Like they're really hilarious, fun people. We all became such good friends. Like I'd worked with Nancy before on our short film Don't Text Back, and on that film, she came up with so many incredible one-liners on the spot. She like essentially punched up our script day of without telling us she was going to do that. And I was like, oh, she really probably should have been a co-writer on that movie because she put in so many great jokes. So when I was first starting to develop this movie, I was like, I think Nancy is such a strong actress. She could carry this whole thing. But she's obviously going to contribute so much to it. If she's the lead, then maybe she'd co-write it with me. So I kind of approached her first because I was like, if we have Nancy, we have a movie. She's strong enough to carry this whole thing on her back. And that was absolutely true. So we wrote basically like a 20-page outline together that sort of has the start and end of every scene and how they flow into each other and a few key sort of jokes throughout the scene. But overall, there was essentially no dialogue written. That all came out on set. It was like 80% at least improv the entire movie. And Andi McQueen is extremely experienced in stand-up comedy and improv also, so they just like picked it up no problem. And Naomi is not at all an actor. I really convinced her to do this. She is a videographer, director of photography in real life, so I just kind of talked her into it, and she like absolutely held her own with these champs of Andi and Nancy.
100%. Wow. All right. Yeah, that's very surprising that Naomi had not acted before, because I think they did fantastic, especially, and that's, that's such a gamble, right? I mean, to go in without a real, to go in with like an outline, you have to have such strong actors. And you absolutely did with this one. They knocked it out of the park. I did not know. I was pleasantly surprised when I got to see Don't Text Back and saw that it was Nancy who was playing almost like a alt universe version of her Rebrand character.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, both are kind of like have shades of her stand-up comedy character, which is she doesn't do stand-up as much anymore. She's mostly directing these days. I actually first saw Andi directed in one of Nancy's short films and saw just how hilarious and charming they were that I asked if Nancy could introduce us for the rebrand. But yeah, Nancy sort of has this real talent for being this kind of bullying character who's just absolutely hilarious in the way that she taunts people and pokes at their raw nerves, kind of.
There is one line near the end of Don't Text Back, and I will cut this if you want absolutely no spoilers for anyone, when they're talking about grabbing a bite to eat. And she's like, "Oh, are you vegan or anything?" And the main girl is like, "Oh, no, but I thought you were." And she's like, "Oh, I am. I just could tell you weren't."
Yeah.
Killed me. Killed.
Yeah, that's one that I'm proud to say I wrote that joke, but the thing is, like, it would not have been anything with the wrong delivery, and Nancy delivered it so perfectly that I shouldn't even be taking credit for having written it because I'm like, she just gets it, like, I feel her and I are very compatible comedy-wise. That's why I think I was like, "Let's co-write together," because we just get what each other finds funny and agree that it's funny and know how to, like, ramp it up between each other, like.
See, and that's such a great artistic relationship to have with your actors, because I know personally, my whole philosophy on scripts, on my sets, are that they are always a living thing. Nothing's in stone. It is, I like writing dialogue. I love writing dialogue. So I'll write a full script, but it's very much I want input from my actors of, does this work? If this beat isn't working for you, if this line doesn't work for you, what works? Do you have something that comes better? Like, I think it's so important when you're either like really just starting out, or maybe, when you hit like the top level of your craft, right? People get very like intense about their own creation. And I think that's good to a point, but film is so much a collaborative art form that,
Yeah, 100%, yeah.
yeah, that listening, I mean, I've made films by myself where I've like directed, tried to act, ran camera, like all of these things. And it's very easy to say my films, since finding collaborators that we can work together, I can bounce things off them and vice versa. Your work improves so much by other eyes and not the opposite, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think the idea of the auteur who goes in with the ironclad script that's just perfect on their first draft, and then everybody sticks to it 100% and their vision is recognized and they are the sole creator of the film, is just like such a huge myth. Like, if there is someone who has that much control, historically, it's actually probably their wife who's like has more of that like vision and control, or like was sort of like collaborating with them to like have that much control. I just think, yeah, I like what you're saying too about how nothing is set in stone, like on set. Like, in addition to improvising the dialogue, like we did revise that 20-page outline like a lot of times because we did our first shoot at the Airbnb that you see in all the exteriors and a couple of key interiors. But then we ran out of time there. We were planning to shoot a great deal more there than we could end up doing in the end because we could only afford it for a few days. So then we ended up completely redressing our apartment to look like the Airbnb and shoot a bunch more stuff here. But we had to sort of, come up with a whole new ending because we were supposed to shoot the climax of the Airbnb and we ran out of time. And then when it came to the day that we were supposed to shoot the ending, we had like a stunt, which like really we should have never been asking Nancy to do. But she very intelligently said, I don't think I actually want you to smash a bottle over my head. I think maybe that's a stunt performer thing to do. And we're like, yeah, super respect that. Totally fair. Well, now let's come up with a new solution and sort of for a few different factors came up with a new ending the day that we shot it. Like Nancy was in the makeup chair getting her like bloody makeup done. And we were coming up with a new ending to go shoot it in like 2 hours basically. And so it has to be you have to be so willing to roll with the punches if you want it to come out well, because if you are just like, no, 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 we have to do what I put in the script, then you're probably going to shoot a really weird skeleton of that if everything doesn't happen to go perfectly, kind of.
Right, 100%. I am a very, very firm believer in scarcity breeds creativity, right? So you're working with limited or no budget, and you have to, sometimes the choices are like not your choice. Like, I don't want a bottle smashed over my head, which fair, respect. But sometimes it's, I need an extra day with the Airbnb that I don't have, right? So, and like you were just saying, it's you make do, you make things happen. And if you gotta rewrite on the fly, like what you ended with, the final product of this film is fantastic. I don't think I've stopped talking about it with people since October, so I cannot wait. Side note, and we can cut this, but is there any plans for a release?
We're in early days of that. We have like one company that's like writing up a contract right now that we like are gonna see what they offer us, and then we're also hoping some more opportunities might come out of Unnamed footage festival that's happening next week. And apparently all the distributors who aren't afraid of found footage will turn out there. So we're hoping we might get some more offers from that, but it's all preliminary on that end. But we're gonna find, I mean, if no one wants to help us release it, then we'll probably put it up for free at some point because we just want people to see it. Really, we spent so little money on it. We're not trying to like turn a big profit or anything like that.
Wonderful. Well, when that happens, however it gets released, please let me know because I will update through all of the socials for Midnight Horror Picture Show and my company. I just want people to see this.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Of course, of course. So I had not previously seen your short films, MonsterDyke and Don't Text Back, which were so much fun to watch, and thank you for sharing those with me. Let's talk about those because, oh my gosh, a lot of fun. The practical effects, especially in MonsterDyke, but also you did do puppetry in Don't Text Back, right?
Yeah, on Don't Text Back, we had this evil cursed locket that kind of turns into a snake and slithers across the floor. And it has like a little fanged mouth that opens and closes. And so we did that with like, it was like a rod puppet. Like we had this little rod sticking out from the side of the locket and a little string at the top to open and close the mouth. And then we just removed and by we, I mean me, I removed the rod and the string in post. And then we also sort of had some reverse gags where we were like pulling on the necklace, but then we played in reverse. So it looks like the necklace kind of like moves up unnaturally and kind of like wraps around her throat when in reality it was like unwrapping. So there's kind of a combination of things there. And I also made the neck wound prosthetic. So I'm always doing my own effects basically. It's like an element of it for me is I love effects, and I'm like, I don't know anyone else who does them as cheap as I do.
See, that's wonderful, and that's such like that's such a great skill to have as a filmmaker. Like, one, that necklace, the wound of where the necklace was pulling looked fantastic. I think it's so important to have multiple skills as a filmmaker working, again, working with smaller or no budgets, having that interest in that like passion for multiple aspects of the process, I think makes you better in each one of them, right? I think if you're into effects and like that's what you do on set, if you know how to run a camera or how that's going to be shot, I feel like that's 100% going to influence how you create a prosthetic. And vice versa, if you're a director and you have no idea the process of how much work goes into that when it comes to your ask to the person who's doing it for you, you have no idea what's reasonable and or how you can work around and cheat around things if you need to. I'm very impressed by anyone who is a director, a cinematographer, multi-hyphen in what they do, because it shows that they're passionate about the creative process.
I really agree. A lot of my favorite filmmakers also like do like visual art or like music or like, like I think it really helps a lot to like I think being only obsessed with cinema and making cinema, you can kind of make things that feel just like imitations of other movies. Whereas if you're pulling from like a wide variety of like reference points, like even if it's not that you're like a accomplished visual artist, but that you have an interest in like Baroque paintings or something, like that's going to influence your work. But if all you do is watch movies, then the movies you make might sometimes, not everyone, but sometimes might come out feeling just like imitation of an imitation of an imitation, as opposed to like pulling from all over the universe kind of for things.
Right. I love that idea. I love that concept of recycled versus curated influence, right?
That's a great way of putting it. Yeah.
So can we talk about MonsterDyke a little bit?
Yes.
Okay, because if we're going to talk about special effects makeup, I would say that's easily the heaviest special effects makeup of the work I've seen of yours.
It's the biggest on taking I've ever done. I bit off just as much as I could chew, but like I was right at the edge of my my abilities there, but I learned so much in the process.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's a life-size puppet, right?
It is, yeah. It's all made out of like a latex skin with expanding foam flesh underneath, you could say, and then it's built on top of a wooden like plinth because it's supposed to be a clay sculpture sitting on top of like an artist's plinth, and that plinth is like hollow with like most of the lid cut out, and our friend is inside of that plinth with her hand up inside of the puppet's face, manipulating the eyes and the mouth, and in some shots, she had like a rubber sheath over her fingers that looked like a tongue that I was like making out with my friend's fingers basically for that. And yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it looked like that was a lot. I mean, it's very central. Can you I'm talking, we're having this conversation and I'm talking like everyone has the background that I
Yeah.
have. Can you give a synopsis of MonsterDyke just for people?
Yeah. So MonsterDyke was something that we made during like the 2020 lockdown. We wanted to make a micro short that we could do with just like 3 or 4 people bubble together. And we didn't want to bring in like even additional actors. So I played the lead role, and my co-star is a life-size monster puppet. And it's basically about a sculptor who's sort of frustrated with dating men and creates this beautiful monster mermaid tentacle woman sculpture who comes to life, and then it's a neurotic engagement between the two of them of this short little film of the two of them making out and more.
And more is very true.
Yeah. Yeah, so that one was basically again, it was Naomi Silver-Vézina who was the director of photography. Our friend Stephanie Burbano helped us build the monster and was the puppeteer inside of it, and then Marielle was co-directing because I was busy running the effects team and acting in it as well, but also directing. So it was a big, very collaborative effort between those 4 people.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. I think working with a small group like that can be a lot of fun. And that goes to something that you said when we spoke earlier, which was that for you, when it comes to making films, if it's not fun, it's not worth doing, right?
100%.
I would love to hear more of your like thoughts on that and kind of what that means. Have you ever been on a set that's not been fun enough to warrant?
I definitely have been on lots of sets that the means did not justify the ends, you know? Like, all throughout film school, most of the headaches and lost sleep and exhaustion caused there amounted to nothing of value. But also professionally as well, like, I don't really do gigs as a effects artist for anyone other than people I really care about and believe in what they're doing, because I don't really wanna just come and sit on, like, a really boring drama film just to give someone a black eye, like, for 20 minutes out of the 12-hour day that I'm sitting there waiting to do it. Like, there's yeah, I've definitely I think the other thing is about it being fun and being worthwhile, like, a lot of the time in the indie space, we're so excited that we're finally getting a chance to shoot our thing that we don't get to do it every day, you know? We'd all like to have our full-time job, you know, a nice reasonable 8-hour day every day on set. Like, that would be amazing, but it's actually so much farther and fewer between than that. So it's like when you get there, like, it has to go right. We have to do everything right. We have to do everything perfect. Like, this is our one shot, you know, like, and then you can sort of not have fun doing it because you're so concerned about this rare opportunity not being squandered, that that can sort of cause you to be so stressed out that you're not really having fun doing it. And I think if the goal is to, as an indie filmmaker, eventually build towards being able to have this be your full-time job and always be on sets and always be making stuff, then hopefully you enjoy your life doing that. Because what's the point of chasing a crazy, hard to achieve dream if you're just going to be a stressed out mess while you're doing it, right? I mean, if it's a dream, it should be enjoyable. Like, yeah, and so I always think back to, it was actually on Don't Text Back, there was a moment where everyone got really stressed because we were running late and everything, and our first AD, like, was like, "Okay, everybody pause, take a breath, we're making art here," and that's, like, so useful, and I just, like, think back to that all the time, that it's like, yeah, we're not, like, trying to solve world hunger, we're trying to make some art, so let's not, like, tear our hair out doing it, you know, like, yeah.
100%, 100%. Like at the end of the day, it's not that serious, right? Bigger
Yeah.
picture, it's not that serious. But in the moment and under the pressure of set, like, absolutely, it can be incredibly stressful, incredibly stressful. And that's, definitely a position I've been in a lot where it's
Yeah.
like, okay, we only have this location for another hour. Somebody showed up late. One of the effects didn't work and it took a half hour to reset, and I think that's part of the process. But for me personally, what I've what I've been learning is very much I need to work with people, and like the understanding when I start working with people is, hey, I will try to be as respectful of your time as this process allows, and like transparency of, hey, you know what? We're gonna be going until 2 today. Or, I'm sure we'll be shooting. We have a soft stop at midnight. We have a hard stop at 2 a.m. And finding like where that is of like, hey, we're really aiming for that. Can we do a little bit more? But also, that comes from just everybody, you're in a production, everybody being respectful of everyone else's time. Don't show up late, don't, and it's professionalism, right? Because I think that's it. When you refocus, like you said, your AD was like, take a breath, but you refocus, and if everyone's there because they want to be there, because they believe that you're making something cool together, that's enough. That's enough for most people.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think there's no reason to do it if you don't love it to some extent. And if you don't, even if you just love the experience of being on set and having access to the craft services, that's like enough reason to love it. But as long as, like show up and find what you love in it and try to give that back to it. But don't freak out. We'll be okay. Like, yeah.
100%. I couldn't agree more. All right. So I got like two final questions for you. So I really wanted to ask you about thematically how the two shorts and the rebrand seem to deal with some similar themes and like what that means to you and your work. I think if we start off with the earliest one I saw, which is MonsterDyke, from my point of view, it's very much a like radical self-acceptance piece, right? And I think that ties so much into our characters in Don't Text Back in the rebrand and this ingenuous, like disconnected socialization between characters. I now that being said, Nancy is just really good at playing that, I think. But it is our from what I noticed, it's our main characters are the straight men in the comedy, right? So the what's happening around them is these very disconnected characters, and anytime there's like real emotion brought to the table in both Don't Text Back and the rebrand, it's it's pushed away. It's like almost repulsive. So, am I on the right track at all? Like,
Yeah, I think you're getting to the I mean, I hadn't really tried to draw a huge line. Like, I definitely saw a line between Don't Text Back and MonsterDyke because Don't Text Back actually came first, and that one's about sort of like, oh, don't continue with these relationships that just take from you and make you miserable and that you feel compelled to respond to someone who you actually kind of hate. Don't Text Back is encouraging someone who's it's trapped in that cycle to stop that cycle. Whereas Monster Dyke kind of starts with someone breaking that cycle. They don't call back the guy who's booty calling them, and then they have a better experience instead, something more magical, more interesting. And then I think the rebrand, what sort of is a through line between all of them is boundaries kind of, is like, I think I've struggled my whole life with being very codependent and with being people pleasing. And so I think something that's being explored through all of these, and it does not occur to me till I'm hearing you talk about what is the connection and what you're pointing at with it kind of made me realize that, yeah, I think one of the biggest themes throughout all of them is how do we navigate boundaries with other people and how do we stop ourselves from accepting advances or requests that are just too much for us and that don't have our best interest at heart. How do you protect yourself from that but also be open to the world kind of at the same time?
yeah, yeah, wow, beautifully said. Just to jump on that a little bit more, like I think in all three there's this idea of like commodification of relationships, right? Where what can you do for me versus it's transactional, right?
Yeah.
And in Don't Text Back, it's a little it's a little bit different, but it's still the same thing, I think, between, our character comes to Nancy's character to and maybe that's it too though. Okay, so this is just going off here for a second. When you talk about boundaries and like being able to set boundaries, is Nancy's characters just really good at setting boundaries? It's like I don't is she a queen of setting boundaries, but like to a point of toxic boundaries?
I mean, I think she might be good at setting boundaries for herself, but she's not Nancy, but both of those characters are bad at respecting boundaries for other people, you know? I think it's someone who's very, like, has this hard shell of being like, "No, you're not gonna ask anything of me or make me do anything I don't wanna do, but I will push you and prod at you and question you in ways that are extremely uncomfortable and beyond your boundaries," you know? So I think there's kind of like this sort of character who's a bit of a one-way street kind of like.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so last question just to wrap things up. What what do you got going next? I know the rebrand's still doing its festival run, and you did tell me that you have another short film.
Yes. Yeah, so the rebrand hopefully will be figuring out some sort of distribution method for a release. That's all in early days of figuring that out, but I'm very hoping that we'll get to have a wide release on streaming so more people can see it. And if that doesn't work out, then maybe we'll just put it up for free because I just want people to see it.
And they should.
Yeah, I hope that everyone gets to who wants to. And then for the next short is Andi McQueen, who played Blair. They wrote a short and asked me to direct, and they star in it. And that's called Walk Me Home. And that I've been submitting to festivals, but only in the last couple of months. So we haven't heard back from any yet. So we'll see. Hopefully it'll be coming to festivals in the next couple of months. And if we get any acceptances before this podcast comes out, I'll let you know, and maybe people will get to see it. But yeah, otherwise that's coming. And I've got another short that I'm shooting next month, which is kind of a proof of concept for this feature that I've been writing and rewriting for the last 5 years that I'm hoping is getting closer to a point where it will be seeking its funding through like the Canadian Arts Council's bodies. So we'll see how that all goes. But that's we got a couple shorts on the horizon, and then things simmering for a bigger feature.
That's so exciting. Yeah, absolutely. Please keep in touch. Let me know anything you got going on with festivals, releases, because I will pass that on to our website and our socials. But yeah, thank you so much for taking the time today. If people want to follow you, support the work you're doing, where can they do that?
The best place where I post about like festivals that are upcoming with my films would be on Instagram, where I'm at Kaye .everyday, K everyday. And I am technically on Blue Sky at K666, but I don't really post there yet. But hey, follow me and maybe I will start using it more because I do want to divest from Meta and all that over time. So yeah.
I'm right there with you. I feel that. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you again so much for talking with me. I really appreciate our conversation, and I can't wait to see Walk Me Home and what happens with the next feature.
Thank you so much for chatting with me. It's a lot of fun.
And thank you for taking the time to tune in. Make sure to go follow Kaye, and I promise you we will be sharing how you can watch the rebrand as soon as we have more info. Find us on Instagram at Midnight Horror Picture Show, and please subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to us on. Our theme music is by Nick Ferrari. You can find him at Nick_Ferrari on Instagram. A little change moving forward, new episodes will release every other Friday. Before I let you go, and on a more somber note, I would like to take a moment to remember a young filmmaker from the Metro Detroit area who passed recently. Sam Carroll was on my short list to guest on this podcast. He was an incredibly talented filmmaker, artist, and musician who had a truly contagious energy and was just an all-around good dude. Our film screened together for years at Horror Film Roulette, and I had the opportunity to see his band Fishfly perform at the 2024 Troma Dance Film Festival. My thoughts are with everyone who knew him, and he will be greatly missed. Until next time, stay spooky and keep supporting indie horror.